They said he would never make it, that a boy like him was destined for nothing but failure. But sometimes, the greatest power a person carries is not in the hands of those who mock them, but in the fire of a heart that refuses to quit. Marcus Johnson grew up in a place where dreams rarely survived. The cracked sidewalks of his neighborhood told stories of struggle, stories that swallowed people whole before they ever had a chance to write their own. Graffiti covered the walls, broken glass glittered on the streets like false promises, and sirens sang louder than birds. His mother worked double shifts at a diner, wiping sweat from her forehead with one hand while clutching unpaid bills in the other. Her smile was always tired, her back always aching. Yet she carried herself with a strength Marcus admired. His father, well, Marcus had stopped asking about him years ago. He was a shadow, a ghost who never came home. And Marcus learned early on that waiting for him was like waiting for rain in a desert. Marcus wasn't the loudest, nor the strongest, nor the kind of boy who commanded a room with his presence. But he carried something inside him that no one else seemed to see, a hunger. He wanted more than the life laid out for him, more than the dead-end expectations his community had for kids like him. He wanted freedom, and not just the freedom of leaving his block, but the freedom of being heard, of being recognized as more than another statistic. But dreams, Marcus would learn, have a way of attracting enemies. At school, Marcus wasn't just overlooked, he was targeted. Teachers doubted him, treating him as though his very presence in the classroom was a disruption waiting to happen. Classmates mocked him, hurling words that stung more than fists. Even the people he thought were his friends found ways to betray him when he needed them most. The first betrayal came when Marcus was only 16. It was supposed to be his moment, the high school talent show. Marcus had been writing poetry since he was 12, verses that spilled out of his pain, his loneliness, his hope. In the quiet of his small bedroom, beneath the glow of a flickering lamp, he had filled notebooks with words he never dared speak out loud. For weeks, he practiced in secret, believing that if he could just get on that stage, maybe someone would finally hear him, maybe someone would understand. But the night of the show, when the spotlight hit and the microphone crackled to life, he saw them, his so-called friends, smirking in the front row. They had stolen his notebook days before, copied his words, and spread them around the school like a cruel joke. By the time Marcus opened his mouth, half the audience already knew his lines. They weren't clapping for him, they were laughing. The sound rose like a tidal wave, crashing over him, drowning his courage. He froze. His chest tightened, his palms trembled, and for the first time in his life, Marcus felt the weight of true humiliation. He walked off that stage to the sound of mockery, each laugh like a knife carving deeper into his pride. That night, Marcus lay in bed staring at the cracked ceiling, shame burning his cheeks. Tears he refused to let fall, burning his eyes. And in that darkness, he promised himself two things. He would never trust so easily again. And one day, he would stand on a stage again, not to be mocked, but to be heard. The promise kept him alive in ways he couldn't yet understand. Life after that night didn't get easier. In fact, it got harder. The bullying escalated. Teachers ignored his raised hand. Classmates whispered behind his back. And Marcus felt smaller and smaller with every passing day. But in the silence of his room, when the world thought they had broken him, he kept writing. Page after page, he poured his pain into words, and though no one else saw it, those words kept him breathing. Graduation came, though not with the triumph he had hoped for. Marcus didn't graduate top of his class, but he graduated, something many said he wouldn't. Through scholarships and sheer stubbornness, he scraped his way into college, leaving behind the cracked sidewalks but carrying the weight of doubt with him. College was another battlefield. Marcus was one of the few black students in his program, and every glance from professors seemed to ask the same unspoken question. Do you even belong here? Group projects became wars of quiet prejudice. He was ignored, dismissed, forced to prove himself twice over just to be acknowledged once. Money was always tight. He worked late nights, stocking shelves at a grocery store, mornings serving coffee before class, his body running on caffeine and hope. There were days he thought about quitting, about packing it all in and going home to work full-time to help his mother. But every time he thought about surrender, he remembered that stage, that laughter, that humiliation. He swore to himself he would never let his story end with mockery. Slowly, painfully, doors began to crack open. Marcus started performing at local open mic nights, his hands trembling around the microphone, his voice shaky at first. Some nights the rooms were empty, some nights the applause was polite at best, but Marcus kept showing up. And then one night everything shifted. After a performance where Marcus had poured every drop of his soul into his words, a man approached him. He was an editor. He handed Marcus a card and said, "You have something. Don't stop." It was the smallest spark, but Marcus carried it like fire. One opportunity led to another. His poems were published in small journals. Invitations trickled in to perform at bigger venues. For the first time in his life, Marcus felt seen. Years later, Marcus stood on another stage. This time the lights were brighter, the audience larger, their eyes fixed on him with respect rather than ridicule. He gripped the microphone, his voice strong and steady, and when he spoke the room was silent. Not with mockery, but with reverence. When he finished, they didn't laugh. They rose to their feet. They clapped. They cheered. And in that thunder of applause, Marcus remembered 16-year-old him, broken and humiliated, and wished he could whisper, "Hold on. It gets better. They were wrong about you." Marcus built a career out of the very thing that once humiliated him. He became a writer, a speaker, a voice for those who felt unheard. He traveled to schools, to communities like the one he grew up in, standing before kids who looked at him with the same haunted eyes he once carried. And he told them the truth. Your story isn't over. Don't let the world convince you otherwise. Don't let them break you. Don't give them that power. And sometimes, when Marcus stood before those kids and saw their faces light up, he thought of his mother. Tired, worn, but unbreakable. And he thought of his father, absent but no longer a wound. He thought of his so-called friends in that high school auditorium. And he realized they had given him a gift without even knowing it. Their betrayal, their laughter, their cruelty, it had lit the fire inside him. A fire that never went out. Because success, Marcus learned, is not the sweetest revenge. Success is the loudest voice. Success is the proof that no matter how many people doubt you, betray you, or humiliate you, the only voice that matters is the one inside that whispers, "Keep going." And that voice, that whisper that became a roar, carried Marcus Johnson from the cracked sidewalks of his childhood to stages across the world, where he was no longer the boy destined to fail, but the man who refused to quit.